These are six phenomenal Black women that we're going to talk about today to celebrate Black history. This month we celebrate Black history. We celebrate phenomenal Black women that changed the course of history with their bravery, talents, and drive to leave an imprint that echoes for generations. We celebrate these women as mothers, daughters, and change makers. We celebrate Black women, past and present. We celebrate women like Jean Augustine, first Black Canadian woman elected to the House of Commons. And we celebrate women like Violet King, who became the first Black person and woman in Canadian history to graduate from law school and be accepted to the bar. We celebrate all of you Black women, devoting yourself to others and making incredible sacrifices for those you love. We celebrate all of you for being phenomenal Black women. So was it really hard for you to narrow down your list to just three phenomenal Black women?
Of course, yeah.
It was hard for me too. There's just so many amazing women that we can draw from, but I was able to select three. So my first was Cicely Tyson, the beautiful Miss Cicely Tyson, who unfortunately left this world on January 28th. She passed away. She was born December 19th, 1924. And she started out her career as a fashion model and an actress. But what I love about her background and her story is that this was at a time when Black women were not really, didn't have an opportunity to get into the entertainment industry as easily as they do today. It was so challenging back at that time, but she started her career as a fashion model before she became an actress. I also learned that she was one of the main founding members of the Black Theater of Harlem, which I thought was phenomenal. I didn't know that. And she was also from Harlem. But what I really loved about Miss Cicely Tyson is when I first saw her in Roots, when I saw her in Harriet Tubman, the movie, I just thought she was incredibly beautiful, just dark skin, dark eyes, just a beautiful, beautiful features. The movie that I loved the most, that really inspired me, was when she played Marva Collins, the story of Marva Collins, a school teacher who took her own funds and created a school for inner city kids that the rest of the school system just didn't think had any opportunities to learn. So that was a fantastic story. I also love the fact that, and this is what really inspires me about Miss Cicely Tyson, is that she never takes a role where a Black woman is not portrayed in a positive light. And I thought that was a great takeaway. And so she inspires me to make sure that we are always putting Black women in a positive light, no matter what we do.
And I agree with all those points. So who is your second choice?
My second choice had to be the beautiful Miss Nina Simone. Nina Simone, born February 21st, 1953. She was actually the sixth of 8 children in her family. And she grew up in a pretty, poor family. They didn't have a lot of money. But she learned to play the piano at age 3. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic and fabulous. She also went to Juilliard, where she studied music. So what I loved about her, she was introduced to me about 15 years ago. I had never heard of her. I Wish I Knew How It Feels to Be Free was one of my favorite songs. When I first heard her sing that song, and just the uniqueness of her voice and the conviction of her voice, told me that she really, really believed in what she was singing. She also not only sang love songs and a lot of jazz, but she sang a lot of political songs too. Like, she was an activist. And she just was phenomenal to me in how she spoke her truth. And that's what I love about her. And that's what inspires me when I think of Nina Simone, is that she spoke her truth through her music. She spoke her truth in her activism, in her actions. And did you know that she actually left the United States and never returned because of racial issues? And the qualities that she has that inspires me is the whole idea of speaking your truth. It's always so important to speak your truth, no matter how hard it is for people to hear it. She definitely walked against the grain. You know, she was way beyond her time as well, I think, too, for the time that she lived. I didn't know she had struggled with mental health issues. You know, I didn't even know she had had a child. So it was a fantastic story to hear her life, hear more about her life.
She was an activist. She did speak her truth, but she found, her artistic way through music to do it. So she was able to not conform to the platform that, society would expect an activist to conform to, but she found her own stage in order to voice, her position and her opinions about the state of the times, which I think is so important for all of us, because although we are still all experiencing, the same or similar threads of a struggle or the struggle, we are still all very unique as individuals. I don't think you can have a discussion about recognizing Black women without talking about Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams was born, she's very young actually. She was born in 1973. And she also came from, they weren't a rich family. She too has a really good documentary that I believe might be on Netflix right now. And her family was a very close-knit family. So her parents were very adamant in raising their children with a sense of service, which I think is the catalyst for the position that she takes right now in her own life and career to really serve her community. She ran for government in the state of Georgia. She lost to another white male candidate, and she was very forthright and vocal to tell the truth about what was happening, why she lost. So a lot of residents in the state experienced at that time voter fraud, essentially. They would go to the polls, they were told that their addresses didn't show up, so therefore they were not eligible to vote in the state. So there was a lot of tampering with voting, voter rights. What I loved about her is that her tenacity to still, step out, do her best to run, even though she didn't win, to then tell the truth about what she thought was happening. And then for our recent elections, she was pinnacle in winning the vote in Georgia, because she went door to door. And she's not the first politician to go door to door, but she did not sleep. She did not stop. And she just, her perseverance is just amazing to me. And I admire anyone who really perseveres in their assignment, really. I really like that about her. And she's just an honest person. She'll stand on the podium. I'm hoping that she'll run in the next presidential bid. But she stood on a stage in, I believe, a TED Talk and said, "I'm not this rich, well put together person. I'm struggling just like each and every one of you," which I think helps for her to be able to identify.
People need to understand that their politicians understand what they're going through. 800,000, people that she reached out to.
Yeah.
To encourage to vote.
She made it onto, I believe, the honor list or the dean's list. And when kids at that time made it onto that list, they actually got invited to the governor's mansion, except when her and her parents got off the local bus and arrived at the gate, the security guard did not believe them that they were invited to the governor's mansion, as though to say that, to look at them and say, well, there's nothing in who you are with my blind eye to tell me that you deserve to be here. And I think that was also a huge driver for her to continue to persevere.
Okay, so who's your next choice?
Melody Hobson is the president of Ariel Investments, which is a financial investment firm in Chicago. And of course, one of the very few Black women in America who own or is at an executive level running an investment firm. Also someone who, she also started from humble beginnings. Her mom, I mean, she also comes from a relatively large family, but she was, there's a very large age gap between her and her brothers and sisters. So in many ways, it was almost as though she were an only child. She talks about how they would borrow gas. They would go to the gas station and borrow gas, or their light would be turned off, or their phone would be turned, their phone service would be disconnected because of unpaid bills. And so because of that experience, it drove her even more to go to school every day, to learn all that she could learn, to make sure that she was not going to repeat that for herself. And so with that, drive, even like when you hear her speak, she talks about rain, sleet, or snow. If the bus wasn't running, she would walk to school to really carve out her what she wanted her reality to look like, which is something that I think that we should all do. We should all, it's so hard. By no stretch of the imagination am I saying that it's not an uphill climb. And we get tired and we get angry and we go through all the battery of emotions. But at the end of the day, we are the masters of our own fate in a lot of ways. And so to still continue to set a vision for ourselves and to pursue that vision with audacity, I think is something to admire, which Melody did. And by doing that, she became eventually the president of Ariel Investment. She happens to be married to George Lucas, and she sits on several different executive boards and is living her best life, to say the least. She has a wonderful TED Talk that you'll find on YouTube called Colorblind, Color Brave. She and a friend who was running for office were holding a luncheon for this person. She and her friend show up for the luncheon. Now he is going to be like the guest of honor. She says that they were dressed in their Sunday best. When they got to the front desk, the receptionist, they said to her, "We're here for the luncheon," and the receptionist got up, took them down a hall, and then when they got down to the hall, turned to them and said, "Where are your uniforms?" It's not like this happened in the 1960s or 50s or, you know what I mean? Like this just happened a few years ago. Profiling and implicit biases still exist. She uses that story to empower people, both of all cultures, to stand in the face of our differences and recognize our differences with a spirit of acceptance. And I love that.
And one of the things I read about her was that she would pay her mortgage and her phone bill like a whole year in advance, just to, just because of that overshadowing of what she went through as a child. So my last person is the beautiful Miss Toni Morrison. So a little bit about her. Born February 18th, 1931, Nobel Prize and Pulitzer Prize winner, novelist and college professor. One of the interesting facts about Toni Morrison that I didn't know was that she said that she hadn't really understood or experienced any like racism until she was in her teens because she grew up in a pretty integrated community. She was the only child and the only Black child in her school who could, in her class in first grade, who could read. So she never considered herself as inferior at all, which I thought was really powerful. I love her creative storytelling of the Black experience and Black people. And the first book of hers that I ever read was The Bluest Eye. And I read that book in a book club that I was part of, Sisters Reading. And that book really changed how I saw Black beauty. I decided that I was beautiful because the thought of a young Black girl in this story, the way she depicts it so beautifully, who thinks that she needs to have blue eyes in order to seem beautiful. It's just heartbreaking.
What she articulates very eloquently in that story what so many Black women and Black girls experience in America and North America.
Because when I think back to even when we first came to Canada and being in public school, I used to wish I had beautiful long hair. You know, not because I never thought there was anything wrong with my hair until I came to Canada and I was in school and I was pointed out as being different and people made fun of my hair and you know, and so the whole I really identified with that character in the story who just she equated beauty with whiteness. She equated beauty with blue eyes. The other thing I loved about that particular story too, which is so true, is that during that time, she uses the story of Dick and Jane in the book to highlight how young kids were taught to read with that book, that story, Dick and Jane. But Black kids couldn't identify with Dick and Jane. You know, that was so foreign to them. And so I thought it was beautiful the way she portrays that from the very beginning, like society doesn't accept us. They don't give us things that we can relate to, even stories. So no wonder this little girl was growing up thinking that whiteness and blue eyes was the most beautiful thing and it was the way to be accepted and to be loved. So I loved Toni Morrison. What I take away from her that inspires me, again, it's to speak your truth and to accept who you are, you know, to accept beauty as to see yourself as a Black woman and see yourself as beautiful. That was the end for me. That was the major point. You're Black, you're beautiful.
So my final pick would be our mom. She was a profound inspiration for me. What I really loved about her is that she, you know, I once read in an article that your happiness is something that is your right and you need to fight for it every day. And I saw her do that. You know, when we first moved to Canada, she was a housewife and she said that she wanted to earn her own money. So she went back to school, got her degree, became a nurse and earned her own money. Did not depend, I mean, although we had our father there, she didn't want to depend on that, which I think just historically women overall used to do and in many communities still do. A very wise woman, because you know we see our mothers as you know the food provider and the caregiver, and we don't really, unless they're in that field, for example, we don't really look at them as the financial wizards or the political strategists that they actually are.
Yes.
And I think Lemmy really was that. In a lot of ways, and she demonstrated it in how she lived. She was unapologetically Black. You know, she was a woman from Hanover, Jamaica. She came to Canada, and you know, by comparison, and this is no criticism to our dad, but you wouldn't necessarily immediately tell that he was from Jamaica if someone were to meet him on the street in Canada. But Mummy, she was like, never let go of the accent, never let go of the culture, never let, you know, and why should she? Because this is who she was. And it didn't devalue her in any way, one bit.
One of the things about our mother that is, I completely agree with you, is that she was unapologetically herself. And I always was actually quite shocked at how she maintained her accent. You know, to the day that she left us, you know, she was still at that accent. And it's funny how it took me this long, you know, to be able to see some of her in me, because I always thought you were more like her than I was, you know, and I'm more like our dad. But she taught me to be a fighter, fighting for what you want, and not letting people take away, you know, things that you have worked so hard for. I've seen Black women just stepping up and just really standing out in their area of, whether it's politics or entertainment, just shining, absolutely shining. I am completely blown away and inspired by some of the Black women that I see, you know, who are not famous or on the world stage, but just continue to strive in their own life, you know, to be something more. So I'm so glad we had an opportunity to highlight some of these Black women during Black History Month.
It's always wonderful to have empowering conversations to remind us that we come from greatness, and that we continue to be a part of a great story, and that there's so much value that we can add to that story for those who are coming behind us, and for ourselves who are still in it.
To all the phenomenal Black women out there, famous or not, doing your thing, keep going, and continue to be unapologetically Black.